Fatu Sar, curled up inside a narrow dog, shed her pregnant body, trembling against the rough wooden wall. The floor beneath her was cold and filthy, soaked with old water and the smell of animals. She wrapped her arms around her belly, whispering to the child inside, as another wave of pain tightened her breath. Only a few steps away inside the house, Ibrahim Diouf's voice rose in laughter. Relatives applauded him, calling him a real man for putting his wife in her place. No one mentioned the woman locked outside like an unwanted animal. The dog beside her whined softly, pressing close for warmth. Then the street fell unnaturally quiet. Heavy engines rolled in. Black SUVs stopped at the gate. Ibrahim froze. Some doors once opened can never be closed again. Where are you watching from today? And what's your local time? If you believe stories of pain should end with justice and healing, subscribe and stay with us. By morning, the house looked exactly the same as it always had. The cream-colored walls stood clean. The gate remained neatly locked. From the outside, nothing suggested cruelty lived within those walls. Fatu Sar was the only proof. She emerged slowly from the dog shed. When Ibrahim finally unlocked the door, her legs were stiff, her back aching, her body heavy with exhaustion and pregnancy. She did not look at him. Experience had taught her that eye contact only invited more humiliation. "Clean yourself," Ibrahim said flatly. "You smell." Fatu nodded and walked past him without a word. Silence had become her shield. It was safer than tears. Safer than explaining pain to a man who had stopped listening long ago. Inside the small bathroom, she leaned against the sink and studied her reflection. Her face was thinner now. The fullness that pregnancy often brought had been replaced by shadows under her eyes. She touched her belly instinctively, counting the slow movements of the baby, checking again that life was still there. She whispered a prayer. This was not the marriage she had imagined. When Fatu met Ibrahim Diouf 3 years earlier, he had been gentle. Not rich, not powerful. Just a man with ambition and soft words. He worked as a logistics supervisor for a local import company, often complaining about unfair bosses and delayed promotions. Fatu listened. She encouraged him. She believed in him. Back then, Ibrahim liked to tell people that Fatu was his good luck. He said she calmed his temper. He said her presence made him think clearly. That version of Ibrahim had vanished. The change came slowly, like mold spreading behind clean paint. When the company downsized and Ibrahim lost his job, frustration replaced gratitude. Long silences filled their home. Then accusations followed. "You think you're better than me. You look down on me, don't you? You'd leave if you could." Fatu never understood where those fears came from. She had never threatened to leave. She had nowhere to go. Mama Rokaya, the woman who raised her, had passed away the year before her wedding. Fatu had no siblings, no relatives who claimed her. Ibrahim knew this, and slowly he began to use it. When Fatu told him she was pregnant, she expected joy. Instead, she saw panic flash across his face. "Are you sure it's mine?" he asked, laughing afterward, like it was a joke. From that day on, her body became another thing he controlled. He decided what she ate, when she slept, where she went. He insisted she quit the small tailoring work she did from home, saying pregnancy made her useless anyway. When she asked for money for prenatal checkups, he told her women had given birth without hospitals for centuries. "You're not special," he said. "Don't act like you are." Fatu learned to move quietly, to speak less, to apologize even when she didn't understand what she'd done wrong. Neighbors noticed, but no one intervened. In their community, marriage was private territory. A woman's endurance was praised, her suffering was normalized. She must have provoked him. Men are under pressure these days. At least he hasn't thrown her out. Fatu heard these words when she passed by. Carrying groceries, her head bowed. She absorbed them without reaction. She had learned that dignity sometimes meant surviving invisibly. The night she was sent to the dog, she'd began with something small. Ibrahim had invited 2 cousins over for dinner. Fatu cooked with shaking hands, fighting nausea, her back screaming for rest. When the stew burned slightly, Ibrahim exploded. "You can't even cook properly anymore," he snapped in front of everyone. "Pregnancy has turned you into a burden." One cousin laughed awkwardly. Another shook his head. Fatu apologized. She always did. But when she quietly suggested that she needed to visit a clinic just once, Ibrahim slammed his hand on the table. "So now you're embarrassing me in front of my family," he shouted. "You want them to think I can't take care of my own wife?" Fatu's voice broke. "I'm just worried about the baby." That was the wrong answer. Ibrahim stood up, grabbed her arm, and dragged her toward the back of the house. He ignored the stunned silence behind him. "Since you want attention," he said coldly, "you can sleep where animals belong." He locked the shed door behind her and walked away. Now standing in the bathroom the next morning, Fatu replayed that moment again and again. Not because she wanted to, but because her mind refused to let it go. She dressed slowly, choosing loose clothing to ease the pressure on her abdomen. When she stepped into the living room, Ibrahim was already on his phone, scrolling as if nothing had happened. "Don't forget," he said without looking up, "my uncle is coming later. Behave yourself." Fatu nodded. She moved through the day like a ghost, sweeping, washing, cooking, each task performed with mechanical precision. Inside, fear gnawed at her. The baby kicked harder than usual. By afternoon, a dull pain settled low in her abdomen. She tried to ignore it. Pain had become familiar. But when dizziness followed, she sat down, breathing shallowly. She thought of Nurse Asatuba, the woman at the small clinic who had once given her vitamins when she came in secretly. The nurse's warning echoed in her mind. "If the pain returns, you must come back immediately." Fatu looked toward the door. She knew what Ibrahim would say if she asked. Still, she stood up and gathered courage like a fragile object afraid it might shatter before she reached him. "Ibrahim," she said softly, approaching him. "I don't feel well. I think I need to." He didn't let her finish. "Here we go again," he muttered. "Always drama." The pain sharpened. Fatu's hand instinctively went to her belly. "I'm scared," she whispered. For a brief second, something flickered in Ibrahim's eyes. Then it hardened. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "Sit down." Fatu obeyed. As evening approached, an unfamiliar tension settled over the house. Outside, engines could be heard in the distance, slow, deliberate, drawing closer to the neighborhood. Fatu didn't know why her heart began to race. She had no idea that the fragile world she had been surviving inside was about to crack open. Fatu Sar had learned from a very young age how to live with unanswered questions. She grew up in a small rented room on the edge of a crowded neighborhood, raised by a woman everyone called Mama Rokaya Fall. Mama Rokaya sold vegetables in the market, okra, onions, dried fish, laid carefully on a faded cloth. Her hands were always rough, her back permanently bent from years of work, yet her voice carried a calm authority that made people listen. To the outside world, Fatu was simply her daughter. But inside that modest home, certain subjects were never discussed. When Fatu was a child, she once asked about her father after seeing another girl run into a man's arms at the market. Mama Rokaya had gone quiet. "He is not part of your life," she said at last, not unkindly but firmly. "And that is all you need to know." Fatu asked again when she was older. About her mother, about where she came from. Each time Mama Rokaya's answer was the same, gentle, evasive, final. Some truths are heavy, she would say. They crush children who carry them too early. So Fatu stopped asking. She learned to be grateful instead. Grateful for the meals Mama Rokaya managed to put on the table. Grateful for the school fees she somehow paid. Grateful for the quiet dignity with which the older woman faced life. Mama Rokaya never raised her voice, never struck her, never called her a burden. You must always walk with kindness, she told Fatu, even when the world is unkind to you. Those words stayed with Fatu long after Mama Rokaya passed away quietly in her sleep, just months before Fatu's wedding. The loss left Fatu unanchored. So when Ibrahim Diouf entered her life offering affection and certainty, she held on to him more tightly than she realized. He spoke confidently. He made plans. He promised a future that felt solid, something she had never truly known. "I'll take care of you," he said often. "You'll never be alone again." Fatu believed him. In the early days of their marriage, Ibrahim's temper showed only in flashes, brief moments of impatience, sharp words that he later dismissed as stress. Fatu excused it. Everyone had flaws. Love, she believed, meant patience. But marriage did not soften Ibrahim. It magnified him. His pride was fragile, easily wounded by comparison. When friends advanced in their careers, he grew bitter. When Fatu received compliments about her cooking, her quiet intelligence, his mood darkened. "She thinks she's smarter than me," he once complained to a friend. Always watching, always thinking. Fatu never understood why her silence unsettled him so deeply. After Mama Rokaya's death, Ibrahim's behavior shifted further. He knew Fatu had no one else, no elders to call, no family to intervene. And that knowledge gave him power. When she became pregnant, that power tightened around her like a fist. Ibrahim's anxiety turned into control. He monitored her movements. He questioned her phone calls. He accused her of wasting money whenever she mentioned medical care. "You women hear one thing from outsiders and suddenly think you know better than your husband," he snapped. Fatu tried to explain. She spoke softly. She avoided confrontation. But pregnancy made her vulnerable in ways she could not hide. Her body ached. Her emotions surfaced unexpectedly. Sometimes alone at night she cried without knowing why. Ibrahim noticed. He began to ridicule her sensitivity. "Look at you," he said once, watching her wipe tears from her face. "Weak already." "How will you raise a child like this?" Fatu internalized the words. She wondered if she truly was weak, if something inside her was broken. Yet in quiet moments, fragments of another life surfaced in her mind, images that did not belong to the world she knew. She dreamed of wide staircases, polished floors, voices speaking in measured tones, of a man standing at a distance, watching her with an expression she could never quite identify. She woke from those dreams, unsettled, her heart racing. When she mentioned them to Ibrahim once, hoping for reassurance, he laughed. "You dream of riches now," he said mockingly. "Maybe you regret marrying a poor man." The accusation stung more than she expected. "I don't regret marrying you," Fatu said quietly. And she meant it, or at least she wanted to. But Ibrahim never heard the sincerity. He heard only judgment. The day after the SUVs arrived in the neighborhood, though Fatu did not yet understand their significance, memories of Mama Rokaya flooded her mind with unusual clarity. She remembered the night Mama Rokaya had fallen ill, calling Fatu to her bedside. "There are things I wanted to tell you," the older woman whispered, her breath shallow. "But I was afraid. Afraid of what Fatu asked, gripping her hand. That the truth would steal your peace," Mama Rokaya replied. "Promise me something." Fatu nodded through tears. "No matter where life takes you, never believe you deserve suffering." At the time, Fatu hadn't fully understood those words. Now sitting alone on the edge of her bed, her body aching her baby, restless inside her, they echoed with painful clarity. For the first time, a dangerous thought crossed her mind. What if this life is not all I was meant for? She dismissed it immediately. Hope felt reckless. Hope had consequences. Yet something had shifted. Later that afternoon, as voices murmured outside the house and unfamiliar footsteps passed the gate, Fatu sensed movement beyond her narrow world. A stirring she could not name. She did not know about Chief Mamadou Sarr. She did not know about a man who had spent decades building an empire while quietly searching for a child lost to fear and circumstance. She did not know that Mama Rokaya's silence had been an act of protection, not secrecy. All Fatu knew was that the walls around her life felt thinner than they had the day before. And somewhere beyond those walls, the past she had been shielded from was finally closing in. If cruelty had a voice, it would not always sound like shouting. Sometimes it sounded like agreement. Fatu Sarr learned this as the days passed. The bruises on her spirit did not come only from Ibrahim Diouf's words or actions, but from the quiet chorus of people who justified him. When Ibrahim's mother visited, she barely looked at Fatu. "A woman's home is her husband's shadow," she said, settling into a chair as Fatu served her tea. "If the shadow moves, she moves. If it darkens, she endures." Fatu lowered her eyes and nodded. There was no space for disagreement. Respect, she had been taught, meant silence, especially in front of elders. Ibrahim listened with satisfaction. Encouraged, he became bolder. He began assigning Fatu tasks late at night, knowing her body was heavy with pregnancy. When she moved slowly, he mocked her. When she asked for rest, he accused her of laziness. "Other women work until the day they give birth," he said. "You act like carrying my child makes you royalty." The neighbors heard his voice through the thin walls. Some shook their heads, others shrugged. "Marriage is hard," one woman said. "She must learn." Learn what? Fatu wondered as she scrubbed floors with trembling hands. How to disappear. Her isolation deepened when Ibrahim took control of all finances. He locked away what little savings they had, claiming responsibility. "If you need something, ask," he said. "I decide." Fatu stopped asking. She measured rice carefully. She watered down soup. She hid pain behind polite smiles when neighbors passed by. Her world shrank to the size of the house, and sometimes smaller. The dog shed became a threat, hanging in the air. "Don't test me," Ibrahim would say quietly whenever she hesitated or sighed too loudly. "You know where you'll sleep." The first time it happened, Fatu believed it was temporary. A warning, a mistake. The second time she realized it was a pattern. The third time, it became routine. Each time Ibrahim justified it as discipline. Each time someone agreed. She needs correction. He's under pressure. She should be grateful he hasn't sent her away. Fatu learned that society had a way of wrapping cruelty in tradition, of turning suffering into duty. Her body, however, did not understand tradition. By her 7th month, exhaustion clung to her bones. Her ankles swelled painfully. The baby's movements became erratic, sometimes frantic, sometimes frighteningly still. One afternoon, as Fatu rested briefly on a stool outside the house, Nurse Isatou Ba happened to pass by. She was returning from the clinic, her uniform neatly pressed, her expression alert. She slowed when she saw Fatu. "Are you all right?" the nurse asked gently. Fatu hesitated. The truth pressed against her chest, desperate to escape. "I'm just tired," she replied. Nurse Isatou studied her closely, the pallor of her skin, the way her hands trembled as they rested on her belly. "Tired is one thing," she said softly. "This is something else." Fatu glanced toward the house instinctively. Ibrahim was inside. "I can't stay long," she whispered. "He doesn't like questions." The nurse nodded, understanding immediately. "Come by the clinic tomorrow," she said quietly. "Early, I'll make time." That small act of concern felt dangerous. It felt like hope. Fatu arrived at the clinic the next morning before sunrise, slipping out while Ibrahim slept. Nurse Isatu examined her carefully, her brow furrowing. "You shouldn't be living under this much stress," she warned. "Your blood pressure is high. You need monitoring. Rest." Fatu let out a short, humorless laugh. "Rest is not something I can ask for," she said. The nurse met her eyes. "Then you must protect yourself in other ways." Fatu didn't know what that meant, but the words stayed with her. When Ibrahim discovered where she had been, his reaction was swift and cold. "So now you go behind my back," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You make me look like a fool." "I was worried about the baby," Fatu replied, barely audible. "That child will be fine," Ibrahim snapped. "You are the problem." That night he locked her in the dog shed again. As Fatu sat on the hard floor wrapping her arms around herself, she realized something terrifying. Ibrahim felt justified. Not ashamed, not conflicted, empowered. Because everyone around him had taught him he was right. The next day, Ibrahim's uncle arrived unexpectedly. A man respected in the community, known for advising young couples. Fatu hoped, foolishly, that he might intervene. Instead, he pulled Ibrahim aside and spoke in low tones. "A woman who challenges her husband brings shame," the uncle said later, addressing Fatu, without looking at her. "Endure. That is your test." Something inside Fatu cracked. Not loudly, not visibly, but permanently. That evening, alone in the bedroom, she pressed her hands against her belly as the baby kicked sharply. "I'm trying," she whispered. "I don't know how much longer I can do this." Her reflection in the mirror startled her. The woman staring back looked older, hardened by quiet suffering. Yet beneath the exhaustion, a flicker of something unfamiliar burned. Defiance. It frightened her. She had been taught that obedience kept her safe. That silence prevented harm. But harm had come anyway. Outside, the neighborhood buzzed with gossip about the black SUVs that had passed through the area earlier that week. Some said government officials were inspecting land. Others whispered about business deals. Ibrahim dismissed the rumors, irritated. "People like us don't matter to people like that," he said. Fatu listened silently, unaware of how close the truth truly was. That night, as Ibrahim slept, Fatu lay awake, counting the seconds between the baby's movements. She remembered Mama Rokaya's words, "Never believe you deserve suffering," and felt tears slide quietly into her hair. For the first time, Fatu allowed herself to imagine a different ending. She did not yet know how, or when, or at what cost. But the belief took root. And belief once planted is hard to uproot. The pain began as a whisper. Fatu Sar noticed it early that morning, a dull tightening low in her abdomen that came and went like a hesitant warning. She paused while sweeping the small living room, one hand pressed to her belly, breathing slowly, the way Nurse Isatuba had shown her. "It will pass," she told herself. Pain had become part of her day's background noise she had learned to ignore. But this felt different, deeper, sharper. By midday it had grown more insistent, accompanied by a heavy pressure that made standing difficult. Ibrahim Diouf sat on the couch scrolling through his phone, his expression dark. Fatu hesitated near the doorway. Asking for help had consequences. But so did silence. "Ibrahim," she said softly, "I don't feel well today." He didn't look up. "You never do." Her throat tightened. "It's the baby, the pain." He sighed loudly and tossed the phone onto the cushion. You've been filling your head with nonsense since that nurse got involved. I'm scared, Fatu whispered. Please, just let me see a doctor. Ibrahim stood up abruptly. His sudden movement made Fatu flinch. How much will this one cost me? He demanded. Another excuse to drain money we don't have. Fatu shook her head. I'll walk. I won't ask for— No, he cut in. You're not going anywhere. The pain surged then, sharp enough to steal her breath. Fatu gasped, gripping the edge of the table to steady herself. Ibrahim watched her for a moment, irritation flickering across his face. For a heartbeat, she thought he might soften. Instead, he turned away. Sit down, he said coldly. Stop embarrassing yourself. Fatu obeyed. Her body folded inward, protecting the life inside her. By late afternoon, the pain had worsened. She noticed dampness between her thighs and panic rose in her chest. She retreated to the bathroom, locking the door behind her, her hands shaking as she checked. Blood. Not much, but enough. Fatu sank to the floor, her back against the door, tears spilling freely now. She thought of Mama Rokhaya fall, of the calm strength that had carried them through years of hardship. She thought of Nurse Aisatu's warning. You need monitoring. She knew then that waiting was no longer an option. When she emerged from the bathroom, her face pale, Ibrahim noticed. What now? He snapped. I'm bleeding, Fatu said, her voice barely audible. Please, I need help. Ibrahim stared at her. The silence stretched. Then he laughed, a short, dismissive sound. Drama, he said. You women see blood and think death is coming. Fatu felt something inside her collapse. Without another word, she picked up her scarf and moved toward the door. Ibrahim blocked her path. Sit down, he repeated. You'll stay right here. For the first time, Fatu didn't obey. She stepped back, then slipped past him when he wasn't expecting it. Her movements fueled by fear and instinct. She ran not fast, but with determination, down the street toward the clinic. Her breath burned, her vision blurred. By the time she reached the small building, Nurse Aisatu was already stepping outside, alerted by the sound of hurried footsteps. Fatu! She exclaimed, rushing forward. The nurse didn't ask permission. She guided Fatu inside, helped her onto an examination table, and worked quickly, her calm presence a lifeline. This is serious, Nurse Aisatu said after a moment, her expression grave. You should have come sooner, I tried, Fatu whispered. He wouldn't let me. The nurse nodded, understanding more than Fatu had said aloud. You need rest, she continued, and supervision. This pregnancy is high risk. Fear wrapped tightly around Fatu's chest. Will my baby be okay if we act carefully? The nurse said gently. But stress like this, violence like this, it endangers you both. The word violence hung in the air. Fatu had never used it, not aloud. When Ibrahim arrived at the clinic later that evening, summoned by a concerned neighbor, his anger was barely contained. Why are you here? He demanded, ignoring the nurse. You ran away like a child. Nurse Aisatu stepped forward. She is my patient, she said firmly, and she needs care. Ibrahim scoffed. She needs discipline. The nurse met his gaze without flinching. What she needs is safety. The room went silent. Ibrahim bristled, his pride wounded. Don't interfere in my marriage, he warned. I will interfere where there is danger, the nurse replied calmly. For a moment, Fatu thought Ibrahim might explode. Instead, he leaned closer to her, his voice low. You're making things worse for yourself, he whispered. Fatu closed her eyes. That night, she was allowed to stay at the clinic under observation. Ibrahim left angrily, muttering about disrespect and shame. Alone in the dim room, Fatu lay still, her hand resting on her belly as machines beeped softly nearby. The baby's heartbeat echoed a steady, fragile rhythm. Tears slid down her temples. She had crossed a line, and she knew there would be consequences. The next morning, Ibrahim returned with a tight smile. "You've had your attention," he said. "Let's go home." Nurse Isatu intervened before Fatu could speak. "She needs rest," she said, "and follow-up care." Ibrahim's jaw clenched. "She will rest at home." Fatu felt the walls closing in again. As she gathered her things, a sense of dread settled over her. The safety of the clinic had been temporary. Home awaited with its rules, its punishments. When they arrived, Ibrahim didn't speak to her. He unlocked the back gate and gestured toward the shed. "Since you like to disobey," he said, "you can stay there tonight." Fatu stared at him, disbelief flooding her face. "I'm pregnant," she said softly. The doctor said, "You'll survive," he replied, already walking away. Inside the shed, Fatu lowered herself slowly onto the hard floor. The pain had dulled, but not disappeared. She wrapped her arms around her belly, rocking gently. "I'm trying to keep you safe," she whispered to the child. "I don't know how much longer I can." That evening, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the neighborhood, unfamiliar vehicles turned into the street, sleek, dark, deliberate. Fatu heard engines slow. She lifted her head. For the first time in a long while, something other than fear stirred in her chest. The evening air grew heavy as the sun slid lower, pressing heat against the walls of the compound. Fatu Sar sat on the edge of the dog shed's wooden plank, her back straight, despite the ache that pulsed through her hips and spine. She had learned that slouching invited pain to spread faster. Breathing slowly, she counted the baby's movements, anchoring herself to each small kick like a promise she could still keep. Inside the house, Ibrahim Diouf was preparing for guests. She heard the clatter of plates, the scrape of chairs, the rhythm of voices that always changed when visitors were present. Ibrahim's tone grew louder, more confident. He laughed easily, the sound carrying through the narrow yard, as if the walls themselves approved. Fatu closed her eyes. When Ibrahim entertained, he became a different man, polite, humorous, attentive. He served food, generously praised tradition, spoke about responsibility and honor. It was a performance he perfected, one that left Fatu invisible, except as a tool. She stood when the door creaked open. "Come," Ibrahim said sharply. "Bring the water." Fatu obeyed, lifting the basin with careful hands. As she stepped into the living room, conversation halted briefly. Eyes flicked toward her belly, then away. No one greeted her. No one asked how she was. She set the basin down and turned to leave. "Not so fast," Ibrahim said. "You'll stay." Fatu froze. "This is my wife, Ibrahim," announced to his visitors, smiling. Pregnancy has made her forget her place. Today, she learns again. A low chuckle rippled through the room. One man shook his head, amused. Another sipped his drink, uninterested. Fatu's heart pounded. "Ibrahim," she whispered. "Please." He stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound reasonable. "You wanted doctors. You wanted attention. Now you have it." He gestured toward her stomach. "Stand properly. Let them see." Fatu's hands trembled. She straightened, humiliation burning her cheeks. The baby shifted sharply inside her as if sensing danger. "See," Ibrahim continued, "strong enough to disobey me, but suddenly weak when it suits her." No one challenged him. The silence felt heavier than shouting. When Ibrahim dismissed her, he did it casually, as if releasing a servant from duty. "Go," he said, "and don't cause trouble." Fatu left the room with measured steps, her dignity clinging by a thread. Outside she paused, breathing in short bursts to steady herself. She did not cry. Tears had become expensive. She saved them for when she was alone. The shed door slammed shut behind her moments later. Inside the narrow space, the darkness felt thicker than usual. Fatou lowered herself slowly, careful not to strain. She wrapped her scarf around her shoulders and pressed her palms to her belly. "I'm here," she whispered to the child. "I'm still here." Minutes passed, then hours. The voices inside the house rose and fell. Laughter, music, clinking glasses. Each sound reminded her how easily pain could be ignored when it wasn't shared. The dog whined softly and lay beside her. Fatou rested her hand against its warm fur, grateful for the quiet companionship. The pain returned sharper this time. She shifted, trying to find relief, but the floor offered none. She breathed through it, counting slowly the way Nurse Isatou had taught her. 1, 2, 3. Her thoughts drifted to Mama Rokhaya Fall, to the nights they spent together whispering stories when the world felt too loud. Mama Rokhaya had never raised her voice, never humiliated her. "Respect yourself," the older woman used to say, "even when no one else does." Fatou wondered if respect could survive in a place like this. Sometime later, footsteps approached. The shed door opened just enough for light to spill in. Ibrahim stood there, his expression unreadable. "Stay there tonight," he said. "You've embarrassed me enough." "I'm not well," Fatou replied quietly. The nurse said Ibrahim cut her off. "You talk too much." He shut the door. Fatou's chest tightened. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against her knees as another wave of pain swept through her. Please, she thought, not to Ibrahim, not to anyone she could name. Please. The night stretched on. At some point, the laughter inside the house faded. The music stopped. The compound fell into a tense stillness. Fatou lost track of time, her awareness narrowing to breath and heartbeat. Then she heard it. Engines, low, controlled, different from the usual traffic that passed the street. These sounds slowed deliberately, one after another, until they stopped. Fatou lifted her head. The dog's stirred ears alert. She listened carefully. Doors opened. Voices murmured, deep, unfamiliar, confident. The sound carried authority she had never heard near their home before. Footsteps approached the gate. A voice spoke clearly. "This is the address." Another replied, "Yes, we'll start here." Fatou's pulse quickened. She stood slowly, ignoring the protest from her body, and pressed her ear against the shed wall. Inside the house, a door slammed. Ibrahim's voice cut through the silence, sharp with sudden urgency. "Who are you?" he demanded. Fatou's breath caught. Something was happening. She could feel it. Not hope, not yet, but a shift. A disturbance in the fragile balance that had kept her trapped. The gate creaked open. More footsteps. The metallic click of something secure being moved aside. Ibrahim's voice rose defensive now. "You can't just come here." A calm reply followed, steady and firm. "We're looking for a woman." Fatou's heart thundered. She pressed a hand to her belly, steadying herself. The shed door rattled as someone brushed past it. Fatou held her breath, fear and anticipation colliding painfully in her chest. For the first time in a long while, the world outside her suffering had taken notice. And nothing, not even Ibrahim, could stop what came next. The gate opened fully with a metallic groan that sliced through the stillness of the compound. Fatou Sarr stood frozen inside the dog, shed her breath shallow, her ears straining to capture every sound beyond the thin wooden wall. Voices moved closer, measured, controlled, unfamiliar. Not the hurried chatter of neighbors, not the careless confidence of Ibrahim Diouf's friends. These voices carried weight, the kind that expected to be obeyed without raising volume. "Good evening," one man said calmly. "We're here on official business." Ibrahim's response came too quickly. "You have the wrong address." There was a pause. Fatu imagined the men exchanging glances, silent communication practiced over years. "Mr. Ibrahim Diouf." Another voice replied, reading from something. "This is the correct address." Fatu's heart pounded so loudly, she feared it would give her away. She stepped closer to the door, pressing her ear against the wood. The smell of the shed faded beneath the sharp edge of anticipation. "What do you want?" Ibrahim demanded. His voice cracked, despite the attempt at authority. "We're looking for a woman," the first man said. "Her name is Fatu Sar." Silence, the kind that stretches time thin. Fatu's knees weakened. She steadied herself with one hand against the wall, the other cradling her belly. The baby kicked, startled by the sudden rush of emotion. "I don't know anyone by that name," Ibrahim said at last. "My wife is resting." "Then you won't mind if we see her," the man replied. Fatu heard footsteps moving deeper into the compound. Ibrahim followed, protesting, his words tumbling over one another. Now excuses piling fast. "She's unwell, pregnant. You can't disturb her." The response was calm, unyielding. "We won't be long." From her position, Fatu could hear the door to the house open then close. Muffled voices echoed inside. The men were thorough. They asked questions. They listened. Ibrahim's tone shifted, swinging between politeness and irritation. Fatu recognized the pattern. He was performing again, this time for a more dangerous audience. Minutes passed. Then she heard it. "Where is she?" the calm voice asked. Ibrahim hesitated. Fatu could almost see the calculation forming behind his eyes. "She's outside," he said slowly. "She likes fresh air." The footsteps changed direction. Fatu's chest tightened as the men moved across the yard, their presence drawing closer to the shed. The dog stood tail stiff, sensing unfamiliar energy. The shed door rattled. Fatu stepped back instinctively. The latch lifted. Light spilled into the narrow space, blinding after hours of darkness. Fatu raised a trembling hand to shield her eyes. A man stood in the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark suit despite the heat. His face held no anger, only focus. Behind him, two others waited, alert but restrained. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The man's gaze dropped to Fatu's swollen belly, then to her bare feet on the dirty floor, to the way she pressed herself against the wall as if trying to disappear into it. Something in his expression shifted. "Ma'am," he said quietly. "Are you Fatu Sar?" Her voice refused to come at first. When it did, it emerged as a whisper. "Yes." The man stepped aside. "Please come with us." Fatu hesitated, fear flooding her veins. She glanced past him and saw Ibrahim standing a few meters away, his face pale, his jaw tight. "Don't listen to them," Ibrahim snapped. "They have no right." One of the men turned toward him. "Sir, step back." The authority in his voice was undeniable. Fatu took a small step forward, then another. Her legs shook, but she kept moving until she was out of the shed, standing in the open yard for the first time that night. The air felt different here, wider, less suffocating. As she passed Ibrahim, his eyes locked onto hers, burning with anger, warning something close to panic. "You're making a mistake," he hissed. Fatu didn't answer. The man in the suit guided her gently toward one of the SUVs parked just outside the gate. She noticed how the street had gone quiet. Neighbors peering from behind curtains, whispers floating like dust in the warm night. Before she could reach the vehicle, another man approached from the opposite side. older, composed. His presence commanded attention without effort. He stopped a few steps away and looked at her. Fatu felt it, then a strange pull in her chest, recognition without memory. Her breath caught. "Are you hurt?" the man asked softly. She swallowed. "I'm pregnant." His eyes softened. "I can see that." He glanced briefly toward Ibrahim, who stood stiffly near the house, then back at Fatu. "My name is Abdoulaye Ndiaye," the man said. "I work for Chief Mamadou Sarr." The name meant nothing to Fatu. "Not yet. We're going to take you to a hospital," Mr. Ndiaye continued. "You and your baby need care." Fatu's instincts screamed caution. Nothing in her life had ever come without conditions. "Why?" she asked. Mr. Ndiaye didn't answer immediately. His gaze flicked briefly to the small gold chain around Fatu's neck, a worn pendant barely visible beneath her scarf. His breath stilled. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly. Fatu touched the pendant reflexively. "My mother gave it to me." "Your mother?" His voice remained calm, but something had changed beneath it. "Mama Rokaya Fall," Fatu replied. "She raised me." Mr. Ndiaye's eyes widened for a fraction of a second before he recovered. He straightened slowly. "That won't be necessary to discuss here," he said. "Please come." Ibrahim stepped forward abruptly. "You can't just take my wife." Two men moved in front of him instantly, not aggressively, but decisively. Sir One said evenly, "This situation is being documented." Ibrahim faltered. The neighbors' whispers grew louder. Fatu felt a strange sensation rising within her fear. Yes, but also something unfamiliar. Protection. She was helped into the SUV, the seat, cool beneath her aching body. As the door closed, muffling the outside noise, Fatu's hands trembled in her lap. Through the window, she saw Ibrahim, shouting, gesturing wildly, his voice lost beneath the engines starting one by one. The convoy pulled away from the compound with deliberate calm. Fatu leaned back exhausted, her eyes burning. She had left the shed. For the first time in months, she was not being ordered where to stand or how to breathe. Mr. Ndiaye sat across from her, his posture composed. He watched her carefully, not with pity but with concern that felt practiced and genuine. "We'll explain everything soon," he said gently. "But for now, focus on breathing." Fatu nodded weakly. As the lights of the neighborhood slipped past the window, she pressed a hand to her belly and whispered a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. "You're not alone anymore." Outside, the city moved on, unaware that a long-buried truth had finally been disturbed. The hospital lights were too bright. Fatu Sarr blinked against them as the stretcher rolled through wide corridors that smelled of antiseptic and polished floors. The ceiling tiles slid past overhead in neat rows, each one identical, each one a reminder that she was no longer in the narrow, suffocating world she had known. Hands guided her gently. Voices spoke in calm, efficient tones. Blood pressure, fetal heart rate, call obstetrics. Fatu felt herself drifting in and out of awareness, her body heavy, her mind lagging behind what was happening around her. She clutched the edge of the thin hospital blanket, afraid that if she let go, everything might disappear. She was placed in a private room. That alone unsettled her. She had never been in a hospital room like this. Quiet, spacious, with a curtain that closed properly and a machine that hummed softly beside the bed. A nurse adjusted her pillow. Another checked her vitals, and a third asked questions, in a voice that expected answers, not excuses. "No stress," one of them said gently. "You and the baby need calm." Calm felt foreign. Fatu nodded, even though her heart was still racing. Minutes later, Mr. Abdoulaye Ndiaye appeared at the doorway. He did not enter immediately. He seemed to pause, as if giving her space to register his presence. Fatu, he said softly. How are you feeling? She searched for the right answer. Tired, she admitted. And confused. That's understandable, he replied. You're safe here. Safe. The word settled over her cautiously, like something fragile. Ibrahim will come, Fatu said, suddenly fear tightening her voice. He'll be angry. Mr. Ndiaye's expression remained steady. He has been informed that he is not permitted to disturb your care. Her breath hitched. He won't accept that. He doesn't have to, Mr. Ndiaye said quietly. As if summoned by the mention of his name, raised voices echoed faintly from the corridor. Fatu's body tensed instantly. I want to see my wife, Ibrahim Diouf's voice rang out sharp with outrage. You have no right to keep her from me. Fatu's hands trembled. Mr. Ndiaye turned toward the door. Stay here, he said calmly. I'll handle this. The voices grew louder, closer. Fatu could hear Ibrahim arguing with hospital staff, accusing them of disrespect, of interference. He sounded frantic, nothing like the controlled man who had ruled their home. A nurse entered quickly and closed the door behind her. You don't need to worry, the nurse said firmly. Security is handling it. Fatu nodded, but her chest still felt tight. She stared at the ceiling, counting breaths until the noise faded. When silence returned, it felt heavier than before. The doctor arrived not long after, a woman with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. She explained Fatu's condition carefully, without rushing. Your pregnancy is high risk, she said. Stress and physical strain have taken a toll. We can stabilize things, but you must rest. You should not return to an unsafe environment. Fatu swallowed. I don't have another place. The doctor exchanged a brief look with the nurse, then smiled reassuringly. We'll make arrangements, she said. You're not leaving tonight. When the door closed again, Fatu allowed herself to cry quietly. Not from pain this time, but from the overwhelming weight of being seen, truly seen for the first time in a long while. Later that evening, Mr. Ndiaye returned, this time accompanied by an older man. Fatu noticed him immediately. He walked with measured steps, his posture upright, his presence commanding without arrogance. His hair was graying at the temples, his suit impeccably tailored. When he looked at her, his gaze was steady and searching. This was not a man accustomed to uncertainty. Mr. Ndiaye spoke first. Fatu, this is Chief Mamadou Sarr. The name landed without meaning. Fatu nodded politely, unsure how to respond. Good evening, sir. Chief Mamadou inclined his head slightly. Good evening, Fatu. His voice was deep, controlled, carrying a warmth that surprised her. I hope you'll forgive the intrusion, he continued, but I felt it was important to see you myself. She glanced briefly at Mr. Ndiaye, then back at the man before her. Why, she asked, honestly. Chief Mamadou did not answer immediately. Instead, his eyes drifted to the thin gold chain around her neck, the pendant resting just above her collarbone. His breath slowed. That necklace, he said carefully. May I ask where it came from? Fatu's fingers curled instinctively around it. My mother gave it to me. Your mother, he repeated. Mama Rokhaya Fall. Fatu stiffened. Yes. A long silence followed. Chief Mamadou looked away briefly, his jaw tightening. When he met her gaze again, something had shifted in emotion he did not fully mask. She was a brave woman, he said quietly. Fatu frowned. You knew her? Chief Mamadou exhaled slowly. Yes. The room seemed to tilt. Mr. Ndiaye stepped forward. Fatu, there are things we need to discuss, but not tonight if you're not ready. Her heart hammered. Discuss what? Chief Mamadou's eyes softened. Your past, he said, and perhaps your future. Before she could respond, the door burst open. Ibrahim stood there, his face flushed, his shirt rumpled, his composure unraveling. "There you are," he snapped, pointing at Fatu. "Look at the trouble you've caused." Security moved in, immediately positioning themselves between him and the bed. "You think you can just steal my wife?" Ibrahim shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. "Fill her head with lies." Fatu shrank back instinctively. Chief Mamadou stepped forward. "Sir," he said calmly, "lower your voice." Ibrahim turned toward him, anger flashing. "And who are you?" "My name is Mamadou Sarr," he replied evenly, "and you will address me with respect." Something in his tone made Ibrahim hesitate. "This is a private matter," Ibrahim argued. "She belongs to me." The words landed heavily. Fatu felt a surge of nausea. Chief Mamadou's gaze hardened. "No one belongs to anyone," he said, "especially not under conditions like these." Ibrahim laughed bitterly. "You don't know anything about my marriage." Chief Mamadou's eyes flicked briefly to Fatu's chart on the bedside table, then back to Ibrahim. "I know enough," he said, "and so do the doctors." Security stepped closer. "Sir, you need to leave." Ibrahim glared at Fatu one last time. "You'll regret this," he warned. She met his eyes, fear still present, but something else now layered beneath it. Resolve. As Ibrahim was escorted out, the room fell silent once more. Fatu's hands shook as she pressed them against the blanket. Chief Mamadou watched her closely. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "You should not have endured that." Her throat tightened. "I don't understand what's happening." He nodded. "You will," he said gently, "in time." As he turned to leave, Fatu spoke without thinking. "Sir," she said, "why are you helping me?" Chief Mamadou paused at the door. He did not turn around immediately. "Because," he said at last, his voice low, "some debts are paid with protection." When the door closed behind him, Fatu lay back against the pillows, her mind racing. Outside her room, conversations continued. Arrangements were made. Decisions were taken without her input, yet for her benefit. She felt suspended between two lives, the one she had survived and the one that was slowly, undeniably reaching for her. Morning arrived quietly in the private hospital room, carried in by pale light filtering through half-drawn curtains. Fatu Sarr woke slowly, disoriented by the unfamiliar softness of the bed and the steady rhythm of machines beside her. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then memory returned sharp and layered, bringing with it a tight knot of emotion. She placed a hand over her belly. The baby moved, gentle and reassuring. Relief washed over her, followed closely by fear. A nurse entered silently, checking monitors with practiced efficiency. "Good morning, Fatu," she said with a warm smile. "How are you feeling?" Tired, Fatu replied honestly, but calmer. "That's good," the nurse said. "Your vitals improved overnight." The baby responded well to rest. Rest. The word still felt strange, like something borrowed. After the nurse left, Fatu lay staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the night before. The shed, the SUVs, the men who spoke with authority, the hospital, and then the man called Chief Mamadou Sarr. She didn't know why his presence unsettled her so deeply. He had not raised his voice. He had not made promises. Yet everything had shifted the moment he stepped into the room. The way people moved around him. The way Ibrahim's confidence crumbled in his presence. And the necklace. Fatu's fingers found the pendant beneath her hospital gown. The gold was worn thin, the small symbol etched into it nearly smooth from years of touch. Mama Rokhaya had given it to her when she was still a child. "You keep this," the older woman had said. "It will remind you that you belong somewhere." Fatu had never asked where that somewhere was. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Mr. Abdoulaye Ndiaye stepped in, holding a tablet and wearing the same composed expression as the night before. "Good morning," he said. "May I come in?" "Yes, Fatu," replied, sitting up slightly. He took a seat near the window, maintaining a respectful distance. "The doctors are pleased with your progress," he said. "You'll remain under observation today." She nodded. "Thank you. For yesterday." Mr. Ndiaye inclined his head. "You don't need to thank us." Fatu hesitated, then asked the question that had been pressing against her chest since she woke. "What happens now?" "That depends," he replied carefully, "on what you want and on what is safe." She swallowed. "Ibrahim will come back." Mr. Ndiaye's gaze did not waver. "He has been informed that any further attempts to interfere will involve legal consequences." Legal consequences. The words felt heavy, unreal. "He won't accept that," Fatu said softly. "He never does." Mr. Ndiaye studied her for a moment. "May I ask you something?" he said. "Yes. Did you ever file a complaint? Tell anyone about what was happening?" Fatu shook her head. "Who would listen?" He nodded, as if he had expected that answer. "You're not alone in that," he said gently. "But things are different now." Before she could ask what he meant, the door opened again. Chief Mamadou Sarr entered the room. He was dressed more casually than the night before, no tie, his jacket draped neatly over one arm. Still, the air seemed to shift around him, as if the room adjusted itself to his presence. "Good morning, Fatu," he said. "I hope you rested." She nodded, unsure how to respond. "Yes, sir." He gestured toward the chair beside her bed. "May I sit?" "Yes." He sat, placing his jacket carefully aside, his movements deliberate. For a few seconds he said nothing. Fatu felt his attention settle on her, not invasive, but focused. "I won't keep you long," he said finally. "I know you've been through a great deal." Her fingers tightened around the blanket. "I want to be clear," he continued. "No one here will force you to do or say anything. But there are matters we should address." Fatu met his gaze. "What matters?" Chief Mamadou took a breath. "You said Mama Rokhaya Fall raised you." "Yes. She came to work for my household many years ago," he said quietly. "Not as a servant, as a guardian." Fatu's heart skipped. "I don't understand." He nodded. "That's expected." He leaned forward slightly. "There was a time when my family faced danger. Certain people believed they could use a child to control me, to weaken me." Fatu's breath grew shallow. "I made a decision," he continued, his voice steady but heavy. "I asked someone I trusted with my life to take my daughter far away, to raise her in safety, in anonymity." The room seemed to tilt. "My daughter," Fatu whispered. Chief Mamadou did not answer immediately. His eyes held hers, searching for recognition, for memory. "Mama Rokhaya Fall was that person," he said. "She protected the child as if she were her own." Fatu's ears rang. "That's not possible," she said, weakly. "She never said I asked her not to," he replied. "Because telling you the truth too early would have put you at risk." Tears blurred Fatu's vision. "Why now?" Chief Mamadou's gaze drifted briefly to the door, then back to her. "Because you were found in a place no daughter of mine should ever be," he said. "And because the symbol on that necklace has not left my family for generations." Fatu clutched the pendant, her chest heaving. "You think I think," he said carefully, "that there is a strong possibility you are my daughter." Silence pressed down on the room, thick and suffocating. Fatu shook her head, disbelief and fear colliding. "No," she whispered. You're wrong. I'm nobody. Chief Mamadou's expression softened. No one is nobody. Mr. Ndiaye spoke gently from his seat. Fatou, we're not asking you to accept anything today. Only to consider the possibility. And if I don't, she asked, panic rising. If I don't want to know, Chief Mamadou nodded slowly. Then we respect that. Her breath hitched. I don't want trouble. You've already lived with trouble, he replied softly. Knowing the truth does not create it. It only reveals it. Fatou looked away, tears spilling freely now. Her entire life, every struggle, every unanswered question, felt suddenly unstable, like ground shifting beneath her feet. What would knowing change? She asked. Chief Mamadou answered without hesitation. Your safety, your child's safety, and your choices. Choices. She had lived so long without them. Before she could respond, the door opened again, and a nurse entered with urgent urgency. Excuse me, she said. There's an issue at the front desk. Fatou's heart dropped instantly. Ibrahim, she asked. The nurse nodded. He's demanding to see you. Chief Mamadou stood immediately. I'll handle this. Fatou reached out without thinking, her fingers brushing his sleeve. Please, she said. Don't let him in. He met her eyes, his expression firm. He won't touch you. As he left the room, Fatou leaned back against the pillows, trembling. Mr. Ndiaye moved closer. You're doing well, he said quietly. One step at a time. Outside, raised voices echoed faintly once more. But this time, Fatou did not shrink. She placed both hands on her belly and whispered words she had never dared to believe before. We may have more than one way out. And for the first time, that possibility felt real. The confrontation at the hospital entrance did not last long, but its echoes lingered throughout the building. From her room, Fatou Sarr could not hear every word exchanged between Ibrahim Diouf and the men standing in his way. Yet she felt the tension ripple through the corridors. The nurses' movements became quicker, their voices lower. Security remained stationed near her door, a quiet but unmistakable barrier. When Chief Mamadou Sarr returned, his expression was controlled, but something deeper moved behind his eyes. He has been asked to leave, he said calmly, and he will not be allowed back today. Fatou released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her hands were shaking again. Thank you, she whispered. Chief Mamadou inclined his head slightly, then took the chair beside her bed once more. Mr. Abdoulaye Ndiaye remained near the window, his posture attentive but unobtrusive. I know what I said earlier has unsettled you. Chief Mamadou continued. I won't push you, but there are things you should understand whether or not you choose to know the full truth. Fatou nodded slowly. Please. Chief Mamadou folded his hands together. Many years ago, my business was not as stable as it is now. Success attracts enemies, some visible, others hidden. I received threats. My family was watched. Fatou listened, her heartbeat, steady but fast. When my daughter was born, he said, I believed love alone would protect her. I was wrong. He paused, as if weighing how much to reveal. There was an incident, he continued, an attempt to use her to force my cooperation. I was advised to send her away, far away, until the danger passed. Fatou's mind raced. So you gave her away. Chief Mamadou met her gaze. I entrusted her to someone who loved her, someone who would disappear completely with her. Mama Rokaya's face rose vividly in Fatou's memory. Her steady eyes, her firm hands, her quiet resolve. She never spoke of it, Fatou said hoarsely. That was the agreement, Chief Mamadou replied. Her silence was your shield. Fatou pressed her lips together, emotion swelling in her chest. Then why now, she asked again. Why find me now? Chief Mamadou's expression darkened slightly. Because I never stopped looking, he said. And because when my team investigated reports of abuse involving a pregnant woman named Fatou Sarr, the details aligned too closely to ignore. Fatou stiffened. Investigated, Mr. Ndi spoke gently. Your clinic visit, your name, the necklace, and Mama Rokaya's record. It all came together. Fatou felt exposed, yet strangely validated. Her suffering had not been invisible after all. Chief Mamadou continued, I won't pretend I deserve your trust. I made decisions that shaped your life without your consent, but I am here now to ensure you are protected. Fatou looked down at her hands. Protection always comes with expectations, she said quietly. Not this time, he replied. Only options. Options. The word hung between them like a fragile bridge. First, he said you will remain under medical care as long as necessary. Second, legal measures will be taken to ensure your safety from Ibrahim Diouf. Fatou's breath caught. Legal measures. Here, yes, Chief Mamadou said. Documentation, restraining orders, evidence. She flinched. That will make him angry. He is already angry, Mr. Ndi said evenly. What matters is preventing harm. Fatou nodded slowly. And, third Chief Mamadou added, there is the matter of confirmation. She knew what he meant without him saying the word. DNA, she whispered. He nodded. Only if you consent. Fatou closed her eyes. Images rushed through her mind, Mama Rokaya's warnings, her own years of struggle, Ibrahim's words cutting deep. If this was true, everything she believed about herself would change. If it was false, she feared the hope might destroy her. I don't know who I am without this life, she said softly. Chief Mamadou's voice softened. You are already who you are, he said. Nothing can erase that. A long silence followed. Finally, Fatou spoke. If I agree, what happens to my marriage? Chief Mamadou's gaze did not waver. Your marriage is already harming you, he said gently. The law can protect you, but the choice to leave is yours. Tears filled Fatou's eyes. I was taught that marriage must be endured, and I was taught that silence solves problems, he replied. Both lessons cost too much. Fatou exhaled shakily. I need time, she said. Of course, Chief Mamadou replied. Take all the time you need. After he left, Fatou lay back staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning. The room felt both safer and more uncertain than ever. Later that afternoon, Nurse Aissatou Ba visited, her presence a familiar comfort. You look overwhelmed, the nurse said softly, adjusting Fatou's pillow. I might be someone else entirely, Fatou replied with a weak smile. Nurse Aissatou chuckled gently. You're still the woman who walked to the clinic in pain to protect her child, she said. Titles don't change that. Fatou swallowed hard. What if I don't recognize the world they're offering me? Then you learn it slowly, the nurse said. Just like you learned to survive the last one. The nurse's words settled deeply. That evening, as Fatou rested, Mr. Ndi returned with documents not to sign but to read. This explains your rights, he said, and the steps we can take when you're ready. Fatou read slowly, her mind absorbing unfamiliar language. Legal protection, emergency custody, safe housing. For the first time, the future appeared on paper, not as fear but as possibility. A knock came at the door. Fatou's heart leapt, but it was not Ibrahim. A police officer stood outside, speaking quietly to security. Mr. Ndiaye exchanged a brief word with him before turning back to Fatou. Ibrahim Diouf attempted to follow the convoy. Earlier, he said. He was stopped. Fatou's stomach tightened. What does that mean? It means he's becoming desperate, Mr. Ndiaye replied. And desperation makes people reckless. That night, Fatu slept fitfully. Dreams tangled together, Mama Rokaya's face blending with Chief Mamadou's the dog shed, dissolving into white hospital walls. When she woke before dawn, her heart racing, she knew one thing with clarity she hadn't felt before. Avoiding the truth would not protect her child. Later that morning, as sunlight streamed softly into the room, Fatu asked to see Chief Mamadou again. When he arrived, she didn't hesitate. "I want the test," she said. "Not for wealth, not for status, for certainty." Chief Mamadou nodded once. "We'll proceed carefully." As preparations were made, Fatu placed both hands over her belly, grounding herself. Whatever the result, the path ahead would no longer be shaped by fear alone. The truth was moving closer, and this time she would face it standing. The decision to proceed with the DNA test did not remain private for long. By midday, the atmosphere around the hospital had changed. Security presence doubled. Nurses spoke in hushed tones. Mr. Abdoulaye Ndiaye coordinated quietly with hospital administration and legal counsel, moving with the calm precision of someone accustomed to crisis. Fatou Sarr sensed it before anyone told her. Something was tightening. She sat upright in bed, her hands resting protectively over her belly as Nurse Isatou Ba checked her blood pressure. The nurse's face was composed, but her eyes flicked toward the door more often than usual. "He's trying again," the nurse said softly, not needing to name who. Fatou nodded. Her stomach clenched, not with pain this time, but with dread. Ibrahim Diouf had never accepted limits. Boundaries to him were insults, and the hospital's refusal to yield had only sharpened his anger. "He called my phone," Fatou said quietly. "I didn't answer." "That was wise," Nurse Isatou replied. "Everything goes through the lawyers now." "Lawyers!" The word still felt unreal, like something that belonged to other people's lives, not hers. Less than an hour later, Mr. Ndiaye entered the room, his expression serious. "He's downstairs," he said, "with documents." Fatou's pulse spiked. "What kind of documents?" "Papers claiming spousal authority," he replied. "Consent forms, a withdrawal request." Her throat tightened. "Withdrawal from what?" "From medical care," he said, "and from any further investigation." Fear washed over her in a cold wave. "He can't do that," she said. "He can try," Mr. Ndiaye answered calmly, "but it won't succeed." Still, the attempt itself felt like a violation. Fatou imagined Ibrahim standing confidently at the desk, speaking over staff, presenting himself as reasonable while painting her as unstable. She had seen that performance before. "I want to talk to him," Fatou said suddenly. "Mr. Ndiaye looked at her sharply. "That's not advisable." "I know," she replied, "but I need to say something, with protection present." There was a long pause. Finally, Mr. Ndiaye nodded. 5 minutes. Security in the room. The meeting was arranged in a consultation office adjacent to her ward. 2 security officers stood by the door. A legal representative sat quietly in the corner observing. Ibrahim entered with stiff confidence, dressed neatly, his expression carefully controlled. When he saw Fatou, his eyes flicked to her belly, then back to her face. "You've gone too far," he said without greeting. "Do you know what people are saying?" Fatou felt her hands shake, but she kept her voice steady. "Sit down." He scoffed, but sat. "You embarrassed me," he continued. "You involved strangers. You're letting them poison your mind." Fatou met his gaze. "You locked me in a dog shed." His jaw tightened. "You disobeyed me." "I was bleeding," she said. "Our child was at risk." Ibrahim leaned forward. "And now you want to destroy our marriage?" Silence followed. Fatou realized then that he truly believed this was about him. "There is no marriage," she said quietly. "Not like this." His eyes widened slightly, then hardened. "You think these people care about you. They'll leave, and you'll have nothing." Fatu swallowed. "I survived with nothing before." For a split second, something like uncertainty crossed his face. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he warned. "You sign those papers, we go home." "This ends, and if I don't?" she asked. His voice dropped. "Then you make an enemy of me." The words were meant to frighten her. Instead, they clarified something. "I already have," Fatu said. Ibrahim stood abruptly. "You're ungrateful," he snapped. "After everything I did for you." Security stepped closer. Mr. Ndiaye spoke calmly. "The meeting is over." Ibrahim glared at Fatu one last time. "You'll regret this." As he was escorted out, Fatu's body sagged with delayed reaction. Nurse Isatu hurried to her side, guiding her back to the bed. "You were brave," the nurse said. Fatu shook her head. "I was terrified." "They are not opposites," Nurse Isatu replied. That afternoon, the hospital formally denied Ibrahim any further access. A temporary restraining order was filed. Police documentation was completed, including Fatu's medical records and photographic evidence of neglect and confinement. Each step felt heavy. That evening, Chief Mamadou Sarr visited again. He listened carefully as Mr. Ndiaye summarized the encounter. "He's escalating," Mr. Ndiaye concluded. "Desperation is setting in." Chief Mamadou nodded. "Then we move faster." He turned to Fatu. "Are you still certain?" Fatu looked down at her belly, feeling the baby stir gently, unaware of the storm surrounding its arrival. "Yes," she said. "I am." The DNA samples were taken the next morning. Quick, clinical, almost anticlimactic. A nurse swabbed Fatu's cheek. Another vial was prepared, already matched with a sample Chief Mamadou had provided earlier. "It will take a few days," the technician explained. A few days. Time stretched in unfamiliar ways. Each hour carried both relief and tension. Fatu was moved to a secure wing of the hospital. Visitors were restricted. Mr. Ndiaye arranged temporary housing options should she need to leave immediately after discharge. Meanwhile, Ibrahim did not disappear. He called relatives. He spread rumors. He told neighbors Fatu had been taken by powerful people for immoral reasons. He presented himself as the victim of a conspiracy. Some believed him, others did not. But the noise reached Fatu anyway through whispered updates, through the careful expressions of staff. "People talk," Nurse Isatu said gently. "They always do." Fatu nodded. "I'm tired of being silent." That night she couldn't sleep. The baby was restless, her thoughts louder than the machines beside her bed. She thought of Mama Rokaya Fall, of the quiet strength that had held her life together, of the secrets carried without complaint. She wondered if Mama Rokaya had known this day would come. "I'm trying to be worthy of what you gave up," Fatu whispered into the darkness. Outside the hospital, Ibrahim paced. He made phone calls that went unanswered. He argued with police. He demanded explanations from people who no longer felt compelled to give them. For the first time, his control was slipping, and he knew it. The next morning, a message arrived on Fatu's phone from an unknown number. "You think you're safe. You're not." Her hands trembled as she handed the phone to Mr. Ndiaye. He read the message once, then nodded. "We anticipated this." "What does that mean?" Fatu asked. "It means we protect you more closely," he replied. "And we prepare." Fatu exhaled slowly, steadying herself. She had crossed the point of return. Whatever the DNA results revealed, Ibrahim had already lost his grip on her life. And that knowledge, terrifying as it was, felt like freedom beginning to take shape. The waiting became its own kind of torment. Fatou Sarr marked time by the sound of footsteps in the corridor, by the rhythm of nurses changing shifts, by the soft beeping of the monitor beside her bed. Each hour stretched longer than the last, filled with thoughts she could not quiet. She was waiting for answers, yet afraid of them. The DNA test results were not expected for another 48 hours, but everything around her seemed to move faster, as if the world sensed a revelation approaching and leaned toward it. That afternoon, Chief Mamadou Sarr asked to see her alone. Mr. Abdoulaye Ndiaye and the legal team stepped out quietly, leaving the room unusually still. Even the machines seemed to lower their voices. Chief Mamadou sat across from Fatou, his posture relaxed but attentive. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he studied her face as if trying to memorize it, not as evidence, but as a human being. "You remind me of someone," he said at last. Fatou swallowed. Mama Rokhaya, a faint smile touched his lips. "Yes, but also her," Fatou asked. "My wife," he replied. "Your mother." The word sent a tremor through Fatou's body. She was strong, he continued. Not loud, not cruel, strong in the way that endures storms without breaking others. Fatou felt tears well in her eyes. Why didn't she come back for me? Chief Mamadou exhaled slowly. Because she never got the chance. He told the story then, not all at once, but carefully, like someone placing fragile pieces on a table. His wife had died suddenly, shortly after Fatou was taken into hiding. An illness that moved too fast, stealing time and explanation alike. By the time Chief Mamadou was able to secure his family's safety, the damage had already been done. "I searched," he said quietly. Not recklessly, not publicly. But I searched. Fatou listened, her heart aching with a grief she had never known how to name. "And Mama Rokhaya?" she asked. "She refused to abandon you," he replied, "even when it would have been easier to return you quietly. She believed stability mattered more than truth at that time." Fatou closed her eyes. "She was right," she whispered. "I survived." "Yes," Chief Mamadou said. "You did." Silence followed, not awkward but heavy with understanding. "I need to ask you something," Fatou said finally. "Anything. If the test confirms what you believe, what happens to me?" Chief Mamadou met her gaze steadily. "That will depend on you, not on me. I don't want to become a symbol," she said, "or a headline, or a replacement for something lost." He nodded. "Nor should you. I don't want my child growing up thinking power excuses cruelty," she continued. "I lived that already." A muscle tightened in Chief Mamadou's jaw. "Then we are aligned." She studied him carefully. "You speak like someone who regrets." He did not deny it. "I regret the years I could not protect you, and the silence that allowed others to harm you." Fatou absorbed that slowly. Regret did not erase the past, but it acknowledged it. Later that evening, Nurse Aissatou Ba returned with warm broth and a quiet smile. "You've been thinking too much," the nurse said gently. "Eat." Fatou managed a small smile. "I think that's unavoidable right now." As she ate, she felt a sudden tightness in her abdomen, stronger than before. She froze, gripping the edge of the bed. "Is something wrong?" Nurse Aissatou asked immediately. "I don't know," Fatou said, her voice strained. "It feels different." The nurse checked the monitor quickly. Her expression sharpened. "We're calling the doctor," she said. "Stay calm." The contractions were irregular, not labor but enough to raise concern. Fatou focused on breathing fear, clawing at her chest. "Not now," she pleaded silently. "Please, not now." The doctor arrived, swiftly examined her and adjusted her medication. "Stress is triggering these responses," the doctor explained. We need to reduce stimulation. Visitors should be limited. Fatu nodded weakly, tears sliding down her temples. After the doctor left, Nurse Aissatou sat beside her, holding her hand. "You're safe," she said. "Your body is reacting to months of fear. It needs time to believe the danger has passed." Fatu squeezed her hand. "I don't know how to stop being afraid." The nurse smiled sadly. "You don't stop, you rest. Courage grows where fear is allowed to breathe." That night, Fatu dreamed of Mama Rokhaya. The older woman stood at the edge of a wide field, her face peaceful. She did not speak. She only nodded as if giving permission. When Fatu woke, the fear had softened into something else. Resolve. The next day brought new tension. Mr. Ndiaye entered the room with urgency in his stride. "Ibrahim Diouf has filed a formal complaint," he said. "He claims unlawful detention and emotional manipulation." Fatu's stomach twisted. "Will it work?" "No," Mr. Ndiaye replied. "But it confirms what we suspected, what he's preparing to discredit you." Chief Mamadou arrived shortly after, his expression firm. "He wants to control the narrative," he said, "before the truth controls him." Fatu took a slow breath, then let the truth speak. Chief Mamadou studied her, a hint of pride flickering across his face. "Are you ready for that? I don't know," she answered honestly. "But I'm ready to stop hiding." That afternoon, arrangements were made for Fatu to be transferred temporarily to a secure residence once medically cleared. Legal protections were strengthened. Statements were prepared but not released. Everything waited on the test. As evening fell, Fatu stood by the window watching the city lights come alive. Somewhere beyond those lights, Ibrahim was plotting, speaking, insisting. For the first time, his actions felt distant. She placed both hands on her belly and whispered, "No matter who I am to the world, I will be your mother first." The baby kicked gently as if answering. 2 days remained, and with each passing hour the truth pressed closer, no longer something to fear, but something ready to be claimed. The call came just after sunrise. Fatu Sar was half awake, her body heavy from medication and restless sleep, when Nurse Aissatou Ba entered the room, with her phone held carefully in both hands. The nurse's expression was controlled, but her eyes carried urgency. "They're ready," she said softly. "The lab has finalized the results." Fatu's heart lurched. "So soon?" she whispered. Nurse Aissatou nodded. "Yes, but before anything is said out loud, there's something else you need to know." Fatu pushed herself into a sitting position, gripping the blanket. "What?" The nurse hesitated, then spoke plainly. "Ibrahim was seen near the hospital early this morning, not at the entrance near the staff parking area." Cold fear rushed through Fatu's veins. "I thought he wasn't allowed here," she said. "He isn't," the nurse replied. "Security intercepted him. But it confirms what Mr. Ndiaye warned us about, that Ibrahim Diouf was running out of time, and desperate men made dangerous decisions." Minutes later, Mr. Abdoulaye Ndiaye entered with 2 security officers behind him. His voice was calm, but his words were precise. "We're moving you," he said, "immediately." Fatu's breath quickened. "Where to?" "A different wing. Fewer access points. Full monitoring." "What about the results?" she asked. "They'll come to us," he replied, "but not here." As the nurses prepared her transfer, Fatu felt a familiar sensation rise, helplessness. But this time something stopped it from overwhelming her. Choice. She wasn't being dragged. She was being protected. As the wheelchair rolled through a quieter corridor, Fatu noticed how carefully the staff moved around her, how no one raised their voice, how every step was deliberate. This was not chaos. This was preparation. She was settled into a smaller room, no windows but secure. Chief Mamadou Sarr arrived shortly after, his face unreadable. "I wanted to tell you myself," he said, pulling a chair close. "Ibrahim is attempting to challenge everything: your care, your autonomy, even your sanity." Fatou let out a bitter laugh. "That sounds familiar." Chief Mamadou's lips pressed together. "He has filed motions accusing us of manipulation. He's contacting media outlets. He's claiming you're being held against your will." Fear flickered in her chest, but it did not take root. "What can he do?" she asked. "He can make noise," Chief Mamadou replied. "But noise is not truth." Fatou nodded slowly. "I want to speak." Chief Mamadou studied her carefully. "About what?" "About what happened to me," she said. "About the shed, about the clinic, about the threats." Mr. Ndiaye stiffened slightly. "That carries risks," I know, Fatou said. "But silence already almost killed my child." The room fell quiet. Finally, Chief Mamadou spoke. "Then we do this correctly. Documented, witnessed, protected." That afternoon, Fatou gave her statement. She spoke slowly, deliberately, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She described the isolation, the confinement, the denial of medical care. She spoke of the dog, shed not with drama but with precision. Each word felt like lifting weight from her chest. The officers listened. The legal team took notes. Nurse Isatou stayed by her side, one hand resting reassuringly on Fatou's arm. When it was over, Fatou felt hollow and strangely lighter. "You did well," Mr. Ndiaye said quietly. That evening, as security patrols increased, Fatou received another message on her phone. "You think powerful people can erase me? They can't. I know what you are now." Her hands trembled as she read it. "What does that mean?" she asked. Chief Mamadou's jaw tightened. "It means he suspects the truth." Fatou swallowed. "Then it's only a matter of time." "Yes," he agreed, "which is why the results will be disclosed under controlled conditions." Night fell uneasily. Fatou barely slept, her mind circling the same questions again and again. Who would she be when morning came? What would the truth demand of her? Just before dawn, a contraction rippled through her abdomen, sharp enough to steal her breath. She gasped, clutching the bedrail. Nurse Isatou was there instantly. "It's okay," the nurse said, checking the monitor. "Stress again. Breathe with me." Fatou followed her instructions, forcing air into her lungs until the pain eased. "I'm scared," Fatou whispered. "What if this destroys everything?" The nurse met her eyes. "What destroyed things was the lie that you deserved suffering." As the sun rose, the room filled with pale light from the hallway. Footsteps approached, measured, deliberate. Mr. Ndiaye entered first. Behind him, a lab representative carrying a sealed folder. Chief Mamadou followed last, his expression solemn. Fatou's heart hammered. "This is it," she said. Chief Mamadou nodded. "Before we open this, I need to ask you something." She looked at him, bracing herself. "No matter what this says," he continued, "you owe no one gratitude. Not me. Not my name. Your worth was never hidden in blood." Tears spilled down Fatou's cheeks. "Thank you." The lab representative placed the folder on the table. No one rushed. Chief Mamadou reached for it, but before he could open it, a loud commotion erupted in the corridor. Shouting, footsteps running, a voice Fatou knew too well. "Ibrahim," she whispered. Security moved instantly, positioning themselves at the door. The shouting grew louder. "I have the right," Ibrahim Diouf yelled. "You can't keep her from me." Fatou's body went rigid, fear surging anew. Chief Mamadou stood. "Stay here," he said firmly. The door shook as someone struck it. "This ends now," Ibrahim shouted. "You hear me?" Fatou, closed her eyes, pressing her hands to her belly. Please, she thought, not like this. The shouting abruptly stopped. Voices lowered, firm, authoritative. Then silence. Moments later, Mr. Ndiaye returned his face. Grave. He's been detained, he said, for violation of the restraining order and for attempted intimidation of a protected witness. Fatu's breath came out in a sob she hadn't expected. It's over, she asked. It's contained, he replied. For now. Chief Mamadou returned to the table and placed his hand on the folder. Then we proceed, he said. The seal was broken. Fatu watched as Chief Mamadou read his eyes, scanning lines, his face carefully controlled. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then his hand trembled. He looked up at her. Tears filled his eyes. Fatu's world narrowed to that single moment. Before he spoke, she knew. She knew in the way her chest burned, in the way her heart felt, suddenly too full for her body. Fatu, he said, his voice breaking. You are my daughter. The words landed like thunder, terrifying, undeniable, irreversible. Fatu's breath caught. The room blurred. She pressed both hands over her belly, grounding herself. Everything she had been, and everything she could become, collided. Outside the room, sirens echoed faintly. Inside, the truth stood unmovable, and nothing, no lie, no fear, no man could force it back into the dark. The room felt impossibly small after the words were spoken. You are my daughter. They echoed in Fatou Sarr's chest, reverberating through memories she had carried, without names, through the nights she slept hungry, beside Mama Rokhaya, through the years she learned to make herself smaller, so the world would not push back. She did not cry at first. Her body went still, as if shock had pressed pause on every reaction. She stared at Chief Mamadou Sarr, searching his face for doubt, for hesitation, for anything that might soften the weight of what he had just said. There was none. Only grief and relief and a trembling honesty that could not be rehearsed. Fatu began, then stopped. Her throat closed around the word. Chief Mamadou set the papers down carefully, as though they might shatter if handled too roughly. He stood, then seemed to think better of it, lowering himself again so he would not loom over her. I don't expect anything from you, he said quietly. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, not even acknowledgement. I only needed you to know the truth. Fatu's hands shook. She pressed them flat against the mattress, grounding herself. My whole life, she said slowly. I believed I was unclaimed. Chief Mamadou flinched. Mama Rokhaya never made me feel unwanted, Fatu continued. But the world did, and he, her voice broke, then steadied. Ibrahim made me feel like I was nothing. A muscle tightened in Chief Mamadou's jaw. That ends now. Almost on cue, raised voices echoed again from down the corridor. The sound was sharper this time, angrier, more chaotic. Ibrahim Diouf, even restrained, even warned, his presence had a way of forcing itself into every space Fatu occupied. Mr. Abdoulaye Ndiaye returned to the room, his expression urgent. He's demanding to see the results. He's claiming spousal rights over any documentation involving Fatu. Fatu felt a familiar surge of fear, but it did not settle the way it once had. No, she said, surprising herself with the firmness of her voice. He has no rights over me. Chief Mamadou turned to her. Are you sure you want to confront him? Fatu inhaled deeply. Her heart raced, but her mind was clear. Yes, she said. Not alone, but yes. The meeting took place in a secured conference room within the hospital. 2 officers stood by the door. Legal counsel sat at one end of the table. Mr. Ndiaye stood beside Fatu while Chief Mamadou took a seat across from Ibrahim. Ibrahim entered in handcuffs. The sight alone sent a ripple through Fatu's body. Not satisfaction, but validation. For once the power in the room did not bend toward him. "You think you've won," Ibrahim sneered, his eyes darting from Fatu to Chief Mamadou. "You think money changes the truth?" Fatu met his gaze steadily. "No," she said. "The truth is what finally reached me." He laughed harshly. "You were nothing before them. You'll be nothing after." Chief Mamadou spoke calmly. "That will be enough." Ibrahim turned toward him, anger flashing. "And who are you to decide I am her father?" Chief Mamadou replied evenly. The room fell silent. Ibrahim's face drained of color. His mouth opened, then closed again as if the words refused to cooperate. "That's impossible," he said finally. "She told me she had no one. She told you what she believed," Chief Mamadou answered, "and you used it against her." Ibrahim shook his head, a frantic edge creeping into his voice. "This is a lie, a setup. She's unstable. She's been manipulated." Fatu leaned forward. "You locked me in a dog shed," she said clearly. "You denied me medical care. You threatened me when I protected our child." Ibrahim's eyes flicked to her belly, then away. "You exaggerate." The legal counsel slid a folder across the table. Medical reports, witness statements, photographic evidence, text messages. Ibrahim stared at the documents, his confidence eroding with each page turned. "This doesn't change anything," he said weakly. "She's still my wife." Fatu's voice did not shake. Not anymore. The words felt heavy but right. "I am filing for divorce," she continued, "and a permanent restraining order." Ibrahim laughed, the sound hollow. "You think you can just walk away?" "Yes," she said. "I already did." Chief Mamadou stood then, his presence commanding the room. "You will be held accountable for what you did," he said. "Not because of who I am, but because of who she is." Ibrahim lunged forward suddenly, rage breaking through what remained of his composure. Officers moved instantly, restraining him. "You can't erase me," Ibrahim shouted. "You hear me? You can't erase me." Fatu did not flinch. "I don't need to erase you," she said softly. "I only need to live." Ibrahim was removed from the room, his voice fading down the corridor, replaced by the steady hum of air conditioning and the quiet exhale of people who had been holding their breath too long. When the door closed, Fatu's legs weakened. She sank back into her chair, her body trembling, not with fear but release. Chief Mamadou knelt beside her, careful not to touch without permission. "I'm sorry," he said again, "for every year you spent unprotected." Fatu looked at him, really, looked at him, not as a savior, not as a symbol, but as a man carrying his own wounds. "We can't rewrite the past," she said, "but we can choose what the truth does next." His eyes filled with tears. "Tell me what you need." She thought for a long moment. "I need safety," she said, "for my child. I need space to heal, and I need time to decide what being your daughter means to me." Chief Mamadou nodded. "You will have all of that." Later that evening, Fatu was moved to a protected residence under medical supervision. The space was quiet, clean, and filled with light. For the first time in months, she slept without listening for footsteps. In the early hours of the morning, labor pains began. Real this time. Doctors moved quickly. Nurse Isatou was at her side, her voice steady and grounding. "You're doing beautifully," the nurse said. "Your body knows what to do." As Fatu breathed through the contractions, she thought of Mama Rokhaya, of the woman who had given her safety when the world could not. She thought of the future, unfolding beyond pain. When the baby's cry finally filled the room, Fatu sobbed. Not from fear, not from loss, but from a joy so fierce it hurt. A daughter. Alive. Safe. Protected. Chief Mamadou stood outside the room, hands shaking as he listened. When he was finally allowed in, Fatou looked up at him, exhaustion and peace mingling in her eyes. "This is your granddaughter," she said. He knelt, tears streaming freely now. "Thank you," he whispered, "not for the child, but for the chance to do better." In that moment, justice was no longer abstract. It breathed, it cried, it lived. The days that followed the birth moved at a gentler pace, as if the world itself had decided to lower its voice. Fatou Sarr woke each morning to soft light spilling across white walls and the quiet, rhythmic breathing of her newborn daughter curled against her chest. The child slept, with one tiny fist tucked beneath her chin, her brow smooth, unaware of the storms she had arrived through. Fatou studied her endlessly. Each breath felt like a promise kept. Nurse Aissatou Ba visited often, checking stitches, monitoring blood pressure, and just as importantly, watching Fatou's eyes. Trauma, the nurse knew, did not disappear with safety. It waited. It tested the ground. "You're healing," the nurse said one afternoon, adjusting the baby's blanket. "Not just physically." Fatou nodded. "I still wake up expecting to hear his voice." "That will fade," Nurse Aissatou said gently. "But don't rush it. Fear leaves slowly when it has lived somewhere too long." Outside the protected residence, life rearranged itself. The restraining order against Ibrahim Diouf was made permanent. The divorce proceedings moved quickly, supported by documented abuse, medical neglect, and witness testimony. Charges were filed, not with vengeance, but with precision. Ibrahim's narrative collapsed under evidence. Neighbors who once shrugged now avoided eye contact. Relatives who had defended him grew quiet. The man who thrived on control found himself stripped of it, contained by laws he had never believed would apply to him. Fatou did not attend the hearings. She didn't need to. Justice did not require her presence to exist. Chief Mamadou Sarr visited often, but never without asking first. He arrived without entourage, without speeches. Sometimes he brought documents. Sometimes he brought food. Often he brought silence and learned how to sit with it. One afternoon, he stood by the window as Fatou rocked her daughter. "I've arranged a trust," he said, "for her education, healthcare, independence." Fatou met his eyes. "Independence matters to me." He nodded. "Then it will be structured that way." She studied him carefully. "You're learning," she said. A small smile touched his lips. "From you." Their relationship did not transform overnight. There were pauses, awkwardness, moments when grief surfaced without warning, but it grew slowly, honestly rooted in respect rather than obligation. Fatou chose a name for her daughter that carried meaning without inheritance, a name that spoke of beginnings, not bloodlines. When Chief Mamadou asked to hold his granddaughter for the first time, he did so with trembling hands, as if afraid she might disappear. "She's strong," he whispered. Fatou smiled softly. "She comes from strong women." Weeks passed. Fatou moved into a small, secure home near the water, simple, quiet, filled with light. She furnished it slowly, choosing items deliberately, learning what it meant to make decisions without fear. At night, when the baby slept, Fatou sometimes sat alone and allowed herself to feel everything she had postponed. Grief for Mama Rokhaya, anger for the years stolen, relief that arrived too late and just in time. She wrote letters she never sent. To Mama Rokhaya, thanking her for the courage of silence. To her younger self, apologizing for the blame she carried. To the woman she was becoming, promising patience. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned gold, Fatou stood on the balcony holding her daughter. The city hummed below, alive and indifferent and full of possibility. She thought of the shed, not with terror but with distance. That place no longer defined her. When the legal process concluded, Chief Mamadou offered to hold a press conference, to tell the story, to name the crime. Fatou declined. Some truths don't need microphones, she said. They need safety. He accepted that. Months later, Fatou returned to the clinic, not as a patient but as a visitor. Nurse Isatou greeted her with open arms. "You look different," the nurse observed. "I feel different," Fatou replied. Still learning, they sat together watching mothers come and go. "I want to help," Fatou said after a moment, quietly. "Women like me." Nurse Isatou nodded understanding immediately. "Then we begin." And they did. Not with headlines, not with grand gestures, but with transport vouchers, legal referrals, safe rooms, conversations that began with listening. Fatou never spoke as a symbol. She spoke as a woman who had survived and refused to disappear. On the anniversary of her daughter's birth, Fatou visited Mama Rokaya's grave. She knelt, placing flowers carefully on the earth. "I found my way," she whispered, "because you taught me how to endure without breaking." As she stood to leave, she felt something she had not expected. Peace. Not the kind that erases pain, but the kind that makes room for it without surrendering. That night, as she held her daughter close, Fatou understood something with clarity that had once felt impossible. Loving someone does not mean enduring cruelty. Family is not proven by suffering, and dignity once reclaimed cannot be taken again. Her daughter stirred opening dark, curious eyes. Fatou smiled. "This world will try to tell you who you are," she whispered, "but you will decide that for yourself." And for the first time in her life, Fatou believed it. Some stories hurt to tell because they mirror real lives too closely. Fatou's journey reminds us that abuse often hides behind closed doors, polite smiles and words like marriage tradition or endurance. For too long she was taught that silence was strength and suffering was duty, but real strength is not the ability to endure pain forever. It is the courage to say, "This is not right," and to protect life when it is most vulnerable. This story is not about wealth saving a woman. It is about truth reaching her before fear destroyed her and her child. Money did not heal Fatou. Safety did. Choice did. Being believed did. And justice came not through revenge, but through accountability and dignity restored. Fatou also teaches us that your past does not define the limits of your future. You can come from silence and still choose your voice. You can be raised without answers and still claim your worth. Healing is not instant, and it does not erase scars, but it gives them meaning. And sometimes the greatest legacy a parent can give a child is not comfort, but freedom from fear. If this story touched you, take a moment to reflect. What part stayed with you the longest? What truth did it awaken in you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice may help someone else feel less alone. If you believe stories like this matter, subscribe to the channel and stay with us. More stories.